Lightning rattles the nursery window as Michael, the widowed millionaire, stands frozen in the doorway. Faith, quiet, unnoticed Faith, holds his crying baby against her chest, shielding the child from Vanessa's trembling, jealous grip. Vanessa whispers, "If you don't control your maid, I will." And for the first time since his wife died, Michael steps between someone and his baby. But when Vanessa smiles, cold, victorious, Faith realizes something terrifying. Vanessa isn't just angry, she's planning something. And Faith might be the only one who can save the child. Michael never expected grief to hollow him out so deeply that he'd hide in the shadows of his own home, unable to love or protect the baby who needed him most. Faith never thought a shy maid like her would be the only person left willing to fight for that child. And Vanessa, she never imagined that the one thing standing between her and the life she wanted was a quiet girl with soft hands and a stubborn, trembling courage. This is the story of a widowed millionaire learning to feel again, a shy maid discovering her own voice, and the baby who brings them together in the most unexpected way. If this story touches you, save it, follow for the next chapters, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? We love to hear it. The house grew quiet after the introduction of their story, as if the walls themselves were waiting to see what these three souls would do next. That night, the routine returned. Faith in the nursery, moving with soft intention, Michael in the hallway, standing where the light didn't reach him, and the baby, his small, uneven breathing filling the silence with a fragile hope neither adult dared to name. Michael leaned his shoulder against the doorframe, his eyes fixed on the slow sway of Faith's arms as she held his son. Every movement she made was gentle, steady, earned. He envied that steadiness. He missed being someone who could offer it. Each time he tried to step forward, memory pulled him back. His wife's laughter, the warmth of her hands, the way she used to whisper that their child would grow up surrounded by love. Her absence was so loud it drowned out his courage. Faith never turned to look at him, but she always knew he was there. She felt his presence the way one feels the weather, quiet, constant, shaping everything. Sometimes his breathing hitched. Sometimes she heard the faint scrape of his shoe against the floor. He was always moments away from entering, yet never able to cross the threshold. To help him without embarrassing him, she spoke to the baby in a tone meant to include him gently. "Your daddy's close," she whispered, careful not to glance at the door. "He's doing his best today, and tomorrow we'll try again, together." Michael's eyes burned. He pressed his fingers against his forehead, trying to steady the ache that rose every time someone treated him with compassion. Faith didn't know how much strength her quiet gave him. Maybe she didn't need to. Maybe the baby did. The nursery glowed with the warm, amber light of the small lamp on the dresser. It softened Faith's profile, rounding her shadow on the pale wall behind her. In that light, she looked like the calm at the center of a storm he hadn't realized he'd been living inside. Then, a sound cut through the tenderness, the rapid, impatient click of heels against the polished floor. Faith froze. Michael straightened, reflex tightening in his shoulders. Vanessa's voice appeared before she did. Smooth, controlled, slightly irritated. "Why is he still crying? It's almost midnight." She stepped into view, blonde hair perfectly arranged, perfume too strong for the quiet room. Her smile, though polite, carried something sharp beneath it, something Faith had noticed before but never named. Michael pulled back instinctively, hiding in the shadow. He wasn't ready to be seen, not by Vanessa, not by anyone. Faith adjusted the baby in her arms, a protective reflex that surprised even her. "Just a little colicky tonight," she said gently, rocking him again. Vanessa's eyes dropped to the child, then flicked to Faith's hands, as if assessing competence more than offering help. "Well," Vanessa sighed, "give him here." Babies sense nervous energy. He needs someone confident, not— She gestured vaguely at Faith's small, tired frame, overwhelmed. Faith wasn't overwhelmed. She was careful, and that carefulness had kept the baby steady for weeks. But Vanessa wasn't someone she contradicted easily. The baby whimpered, sensing tension he couldn't understand. Faith swallowed, and her fingers tightened around the blanket, so subtly that only someone watching her closely would have noticed. Michael noticed. From behind the door, his breathing deepened. He watched Vanessa step closer, arm outstretched, a flicker of irritation crossing her face when the baby cried louder instead of settling. Faith shifted her feet, instinctively cradling him closer to her chest. She didn't step back, But she didn't give in either. Vanessa frowned. "Faith, hand him to me." The baby's small cry broke into a full wail. Piercing, helpless, frightened. It happened so fast. Vanessa's expression tightened. Her hand reached out again, quicker this time, less patient. The baby's cry sharpened, and that was the moment Michael's body made the choice his grief never let his mind make. He stepped forward, out of the shadows, into the warm nursery light. The door clicked as it opened. Vanessa startled. Faith froze, and Michael's voice, weak, rough but unmistakably awake, filled the space for the first time in weeks. "Wait!" The baby cried louder, as if begging him to keep going. Vanessa's hand hovered mid-air. Faith held her breath. The room stood suspended between fear and hope. Right as Vanessa reached for the baby again, a flicker of irritation in her movement, and Michael finally crossed the threshold. The air in the nursery seemed to hold its breath when Michael stepped forward. Faith felt the shift in the room before she fully understood it, like something long asleep had finally decided to wake. Michael stood a few steps inside the doorway, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on Vanessa's outstretched hand. For a moment, no one moved. Then Vanessa, maintaining her perfect smile, reached once more toward the baby, a bit too fast for someone claiming calm intentions. Faith reacted before thought had time to catch up. Her body shifted. One foot slid in front of the other, and she stepped between Vanessa and the child. Her heart pounded so loudly she wondered if both of them could hear it. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't push. She simply stood there, small, steady, unmoving. It was the first boundary she had ever set in that house. Michael inhaled sharply, not in anger, but in something fragile and raw. He wasn't used to anyone protecting what he should be protecting himself. And the sight of Faith, this shy, soft-spoken girl standing like a quiet wall between danger and his son, made something inside him twist painfully. Vanessa's smile thinned. "Faith," she said, her tone dipped in sugar. "You're misunderstanding. I was only helping. You're exhausted, you know. It's late. You don't have to do everything." Faith didn't look at her. She focused on the baby, who pressed his tiny face into her shoulder, seeking warmth and safety in the rhythm of her breath. "I've got him," she whispered, her voice trembling but true. Michael watched her, feeling both admiration and shame washing through him in slow, steady waves. Faith was being the adult he wasn't sure he knew how to be anymore. Vanessa let out a soft laugh, light, dismissive. "You're being sensitive, that's all. I wasn't going to hurt him." Her eyes drifted to the child, lingering just a moment too long. Not unkind, not hostile, but there was something there. Impatience, maybe. A quiet frustration she didn't bother hiding. Faith felt her stomach tighten. The baby whimpered. Michael took half a step closer. The tension in the room wasn't loud. It was quiet, precise, the kind that settled deep into the bones. Faith rocked the baby gently, letting him feel the safety of familiar motion. "He's just scared," she murmured, more to the child than to the adults. "Let's give him a moment." Vanessa lifted her chin. "Well, if you insist on doing everything yourself." She smoothed her hair with a practiced gesture and added, "Michael, darling, you should tell your staff when they're overstepping." Michael's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Not yet. His silence wasn't agreement. It was confusion, grief, fear. Faith understood that now more clearly than ever. Vanessa, expecting compliance, allowed her annoyance to flicker before she tucked it neatly behind another polished smile. "I'll be in the living room when you're done," she said. And with one final look, sharp, assessing, she stepped out of the nursery. The door clicked shut behind her. The room exhaled. Faith felt her knees weaken, but she didn't let it show. Instead, she carried the baby to the crib, humming softly so he could follow the sound instead of the memory of tension. Michael watched her hands, the steadiness of them, the care she gave a child who wasn't hers, the quiet dignity she never announced. He wanted to say thank you. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to ask how she always seemed to know what to do when he didn't. But before he could form any words, Faith gently lowered the baby into the crib, and that was when she saw it, a small glint of something by the pillow. She leaned closer, careful not to startle the child. Her breath caught. It was a bead, a broken glass bead, freshly cracked, the edge sharp, dangerous, and familiar. Faith lifted it between her fingers, heart fluttering. She'd seen beads like this earlier that evening, dangling from a bracelet on Vanessa's wrist. Behind her, Michael noticed the way Faith's shoulders stiffened. "Faith," he whispered, stepping closer. "What is that?" Faith turned slowly, the bead trembling between her fingers. I found this," she murmured, "right where the baby sleeps." The nursery fell silent again, but this silence was different, heavier, sharper, waiting. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The small bead rested in Faith's palm like a confession neither of them had asked for. A tiny thing, fragile and broken, yet sharp enough to harm a child who didn't know danger existed. Michael's breath unsteadied. He reached for the bead, then paused, fingers trembling before they touched her hand. Faith turned her palm upward, offering it without a word. When his fingers brushed hers, it wasn't romantic. It was the shared weight of responsibility, of fear, of something neither of them could ignore anymore. Michael closed his hand around the bead. His voice was low, almost a whisper. This is from Vanessa's bracelet." Faith nodded quietly. She didn't accuse. She didn't assume. She simply confirmed what they both recognized. "She wore it tonight," she murmured. "I noticed it when she reached toward him." Michael swallowed hard. He looked toward the door, as if Vanessa might reappear. Ready with explanations he was too tired to judge properly. The pain behind his eyes softened into something like determination. "I need to talk to her," he said, though his voice still carried the exhaustion of a man who had used all his strength just entering the nursery. Faith didn't want to witness that conversation, not out of fear, but out of respect. Still, following him felt safer than staying in the nursery with her thoughts. She placed a gentle hand on the crib railing, reassuring the baby one last time before stepping away. "I'll stay nearby," she said, "in case he wakes." Michael gave a small nod, gratitude flickering in his tired green eyes, and then he left the room, walking down the hall with a steadiness he didn't quite feel. Faith followed quietly, stopping just before the living room entrance. Vanessa stood near the fireplace, turning a wine glass slowly between her fingers. She looked up, pleased to see Michael, until she noticed his expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, tone crisp, rehearsed. Michael held out the small glass bead. "Your bracelet," he said gently. "One of the beads broke off." Vanessa blinked. "Did it?" "It was in the crib," he said softly. Faith watched from the doorway, heart pounding at the tenderness in his tone. He wasn't accusing. He wasn't attacking. He was trying desperately to be fair. Vanessa laughed lightly, dismissing concern with elegance. "Michael, sweetheart, I must have lost it earlier. You're reading too much into it." "It was right next to his pillow," he repeated, voice barely above a whisper. The smile on Vanessa's face faltered, just a fragment. Then she replaced it with something more dramatic. Hurt, disbelief, controlled disappointment. "So now you're suggesting I'm careless or dangerous?" Her hand rose to her chest. "After everything I've done for you?" Michael's shoulders sank, not in defeat, but in the ache of someone who hated conflict. "I didn't say that," he replied softly. I need to understand." Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice into something intimate. "Michael, we've been trying to build a life together, and lately, you're slipping away. You hide in that nursery every night. You won't talk to me, and now you're questioning my intentions." Faith's breath caught. This wasn't about the bead anymore. Vanessa cupped Michael's arm delicately. "I love you," she said, "and I deserve trust. We deserve a future." Michael looked down at the bead still trapped between his trembling fingers. "I'm not accusing you," he whispered. "I'm asking for clarity. That's all." Vanessa's expression sharpened for a fraction of a second, too quick for most eyes to catch. But Faith saw it. "You're letting other people influence you," Vanessa said, voice thin with irritation. "People who don't understand what we have." Michael blinked. "Vanessa," she stepped back, mask cracking just a little. "If you don't trust me, maybe I shouldn't be here tonight." Before he could respond, she grabbed her coat from the back of the sofa. Michael reached out instinctively. "Please wait. We can talk." But Vanessa was already walking toward the door, her heels striking the floor with quick, controlled anger. She passed Faith without slowing. Her perfume brushed the air, sweet, cold, unfamiliar tonight. And as she walked by, she leaned in just enough for her whisper to reach only Faith's ears. "Stay out of my way." The words landed like a shadow, quiet, but unmistakably real. Faith's breath steadied, not from fear, but from clarity, and Michael, still holding the bead, watched Vanessa leave with a sorrow that felt too heavy for one man. The door closed. The house fell silent, but nothing felt quiet anymore. The door had barely finished echoing behind Vanessa when the house seemed to dim, not darker, just quieter in a way that revealed how much tension had been hiding in plain sight. Michael stood in the living room for a long moment, the small bead still resting in his hand. He didn't close his fist around it. He simply stared at it, like a symbol of something he hadn't dared to question until tonight. Faith remained near the doorway, still and steady. She didn't ask if he was all right. She didn't approach or retreat. She simply stayed present like a lantern left on during a storm. Finally, Michael exhaled and lifted his eyes toward her. "Could you come with me?" he asked softly. Faith nodded, and the two walked back to the nursery together. Their footsteps were quiet, cautious, as though they were entering a sacred space neither wanted to disturb. Inside, the baby stirred in the crib, sensing the shift in the room before seeing them. Faith moved first, lifting him carefully, but before she could settle him against her shoulder, Michael's hand rose, hesitant, trembling. "Let me," he whispered. It was the first time he'd reached for his son in weeks. Faith read the sincerity in his face. Not pressure, not pride, a request. A man asking for a chance he wasn't sure he deserved. She gently placed the baby in his arms. For a heartbeat, Michael didn't breathe. His hands shook under the small weight. His shoulders tightened. His grief rose like a tide trying to swallow him whole. Then the baby's tiny fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, and everything inside Michael softened. He sank slowly into the rocking chair, holding his son close, closer than memory had let him for so long. The baby settled almost instantly, his little face pressing into Michael's chest, his breath syncing with the rhythm of his father's heartbeat. Faith stepped back, giving them space. She didn't move far, just enough to watch over them without intruding. Michael's voice cracked the stillness. "I don't know how to do this anymore," he murmured, eyes fixed on his son's small head. "I keep trying to reach for him, but all I feel is on the moment I lost her." His throat tightened. The baby shifted, letting out a soft, sleepy sigh that crumbled the last of Michael's restraint. "She used to sit in this chair," he whispered, "right here. I'd pass by the door and I'd hear her humming. I should have recorded it. I should have kept everything. I should have." He blinked hard, shaking his head. "I should have been stronger." Faith's breath caught, but she stayed silent. This was not a moment for guidance. This was a moment for presence, and she offered it in the quietest, most respectful way possible. Standing nearby, hands folded in front of her, her eyes soft but steady. Michael's tears fell without sound, falling onto the baby's blanket like small confessions. "I'm scared of being his father," he admitted, voice trembling. "Because if I fail, I'll lose the last piece of her I have left." Faith had no script for this kind of vulnerability, but she understood grief, its weight, its quiet cruelty, its ability to convince people they were unworthy of love. Her voice came gently. "You're not failing him," she said. "You're here, and sometimes, that's the bravest thing someone can be." Michael looked up at her, really looked, and in his eyes, Faith saw something shift. Not affection, not attachment, but trust, fragile, unfamiliar, and deeply human. He wiped his cheek with his sleeve and glanced at the crib, then back at her. "Faith," he murmured. "Earlier tonight and in the nursery." He hesitated, the question weighing more than the bead still in his pocket. "How did you know my son was in danger?" Faith opened her mouth to answer, but before a single word left her lips, the nursery door clicked open. A soft sound, a small interruption, but enough to freeze the air between them. The nursery door opened with that soft click, and both Michael and Faith turned their heads at the same time. Vanessa stood there. She leaned lightly on the doorframe as though she'd been passing by casually, though her perfectly arranged hair, flawless makeup, and composed posture suggested she had chosen this moment very carefully. Her smile was warm. Her eyes were not. "Oh," she said brightly, "I didn't realize you were both in here. How sweet." Faith lowered her gaze instinctively, her hands gently brushing the edge of the crib. Michael shifted the baby in his arms, protective without realizing it. Vanessa stepped into the room with slow, elegant movements, as if entering a stage she had memorized. "I was thinking," she began, clasping her hands together, It might be best if we adjust Faith's responsibilities for a while. Faith froze. Michael lifted his head, his expression softening with confusion rather than confrontation. Adjust? He asked. What do you mean? Vanessa walked closer to him, her heeled steps measured, precise. She rested one hand on the side of the rocking chair, careful not to touch him, careful to appear gentle. Darling, she said calmly, she's been overstepping. I know she means well, but she's too attached to the baby. It's not healthy. For anyone. Faith's fingers curled at her sides, though her face remained composed. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She simply listened, knowing her role, her place, her quiet dignity. Michael's jaw tightened, not out of anger toward Vanessa, but out of something more complicated, a tug of war inside him. Guilt, gratitude, fear of conflict, and the beginning of trust and faith that he didn't know how to hold yet. Vanessa, he started, choosing his words carefully. Faith has been helping more than anyone. I know, she replied quickly, cutting off the softness in his tone. And that's the problem. You're relying on her too much. She's a maid, not family. The baby stirred in Michael's arms at the sharp note in her voice. Instinctively, he held him closer. Vanessa's smile flickered, just for a moment before she smoothed it again. Let's give her other duties for now, she continued. Something away from the nursery. We can bring in a professional nanny, someone trained, someone who won't interfere. Faith lowered her head so they wouldn't see the way her throat tightened. Michael looked between them, Vanessa's poised confidence, Faith's quiet stillness. He felt the weight of a choice he wasn't ready to make. Maybe, he whispered, unsure. Maybe a few days, just until things settle. Faith's chest felt hollow, not from rejection. She never expected to be the center of anything, but from the thought of leaving the baby when he needed her calm presence most. Still, she nodded respectfully. Of course, Mr. Hale, she murmured. Michael's heart twisted at the formality. She hadn't called him that in weeks. Vanessa clapped her hands once, softly. Good. I'll speak to the staff manager. She leaned down toward Faith, still smiling. I know change can be scary, but it's better this way. Faith didn't answer. Some truths lived safer in silence. Michael watched her closely, noticing the faint tremor in her fingers. The first sign she wasn't as composed as she appeared. Guilt washed over him. He wanted to tell her she didn't have to go. He wanted to say her presence mattered. He wanted to choose courage. But grief was a cage he hadn't fully broken yet. Vanessa straightened, satisfied. I'll let you two finish up here, she said. Then she left the room as gracefully as she had entered. The door closed behind her. Faith lifted her eyes at last, meeting Michael's. There was nothing accusing in her gaze, only a soft ache and a deep sense of responsibility she couldn't ignore. I'll pack my things, she whispered. Michael opened his mouth as if to stop her, but no words came. Faith turned and walked to her small room at the end of the hall. The space was simple, a single bed, a wooden dresser, a folded blanket she'd brought from home. She began packing slowly, folding each piece of clothing with care, telling herself she had done the right thing by stepping back. It wasn't her place to stay where she wasn't wanted, no matter how much the baby trusted her arms, or how much Michael's quiet grief seemed to anchor itself to her presence. She placed the last folded shirt in her bag and zipped it. Her hand lingered on the fabric. A soft silence filled the room. And then, a scream. Not a cry, not a whimper. A sharp, frightened scream. From the baby. From down the hall. Faith's heart jolted. Her bag slipped from her hand and hit the floor. She didn't think. She didn't breathe. She ran. Faith didn't remember opening her door. She didn't remember turning the corner. She only remembered the sound. The baby's scream tore through the hallway. High, frantic, desperate. It wasn't a hunger cry. It wasn't a tired cry. It was the kind of cry a child makes when they don't feel safe. Faith reached the nursery in seconds. The door was half open. Inside, Vanessa stood alone with the baby. Her hair was out of place, her breathing uneven, her arms struggling to hold him correctly as he writhed. Terrified, she bounced him awkwardly, her movements too sharp, too rushed, too impatient. Stop crying, please just stop crying, and she muttered, trying to maintain the polished calm she wore like armor. But the cracks showed, and the baby felt every one of them. Faith moved before she could think. She stepped into the room, voice soft but steady. Give him to me. Vanessa spun around, startled. Her grip slipped. The baby's cry rose into a trembling wail. "Faith, what are you? You shouldn't even be here," Vanessa snapped, clutching the child closer in a way that only made him cry harder. Faith didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply extended her arms. Gentle, open, certain. "It's okay," she whispered. "Just let me help." Vanessa's breathing quickened. She tried adjusting the baby again, but her frustration made her movements stiff, uncoordinated. "He won't stop," she said, a tremor betraying the calm she tried to fake. He hates me right now, I don't know. He's scared," Faith said softly. "That's all. Please." Finally, whether from exhaustion or helplessness, Vanessa let Faith approach, and the moment Faith's arms closed around the baby, everything shifted. The baby clung to her, burying his wet face into her shoulder. His sobbing eased into broken hiccups. His tiny hand reached up, holding the fabric of her cardigan like an anchor. Faith rocked him gently, murmuring soothing sounds more than words, letting the rhythm of her breath guide his back to calm. Vanessa watched, eyes tightening with something too tangled to name. Shame, perhaps, or jealousy, or the sobering recognition that the baby felt safer with someone else. But then, footsteps, slow, heavy, approaching. Michael. He entered the nursery, confusion in his expression, until he saw Faith holding the baby, and Vanessa standing just beside them, flustered, out of breath, her hands still trembling from the attempt. His gaze sharpened, not with anger, but with instinct, protectiveness. It woke in him all at once, as if a dormant part of his heart had snapped back to life. "What happened?" Michael asked, stepping closer. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight. Vanessa opened her mouth quickly. "Nothing, I had him under control. He just started screaming out of nowhere and I—" Faith didn't interrupt. She didn't defend herself. She simply continued trying to calm the child, her cheek softly pressed to the top of his head. It was the baby who told the truth. When Michael reached out and touched his son's back, the child flinched, just for a second, then melted into Faith's arms again, gripping her tighter. Michael's heart cracked in a new way. He didn't say anything, but Vanessa felt the shift. She stepped toward him with a forced smile. "Michael, you have to understand," she said gently, trying to take his arm. Faith barged in here but her voice faltered, because in the corner of the nursery, small, almost invisible, a tiny red light blinked. The nanny cam, recording, watching, silently holding every moment. Vanessa's breath caught. Her eyes flicked toward the camera, then toward Michael, then toward Faith. I can explain," she whispered, the smile slipping from her face. Michael followed her gaze. The red light blinked again, soft, unforgiving, true. Faith held the baby closer, bracing herself for whatever would come next. The red flashing of the nanny cam seemed louder than any other sound in the room. Vanessa stood motionless, as if that tiny point of light had taken all the air away from her. Faith held the baby against her chest, feeling his heart race, and then slow down beneath her hand. Michael walked slowly to the crib. He didn't ask for the baby for himself, not because he didn't want to hold him, but because at that moment, he understood that Faith was the safe haven keeping the little one whole. "Faith," he said in a low voice, "come with me. Let's watch the recording." She nodded. Vanessa said nothing. Michael went out first, and Faith followed a few steps behind, the baby breathing more calmly now, its little face hidden between her shoulder and the fabric of her blouse. In the hallway, the lights were cooler. The silence seemed longer. They entered Michael's office. The large screen on the wall lit up when he touched the panel. Faith stood beside his chair, not daring to sit down. The baby, almost asleep, settled more comfortably in her arms. Michael pressed the play button. The recording started smoothly. Vanessa enters the room, trying to get the baby out of the crib. Faith observed Michael beside her more than she looked at the screen. His deep green eyes followed every movement. As Vanessa awkwardly tried to hold the baby, the little one's head unsupported, his body uncomfortable, Michael's jaw clenched. The recording progressed. They heard the baby cry, the crying that made Faith run. And then, the hardest moment. Vanessa was trying to force the baby to stop, not hurting him, not intentionally, but clearly beyond what the little one could bear. The impatient movements, the uncomfortable way it made the baby arch his back, the clear frustration in her eyes. Nothing monstrous, just Dangerous, insecure, and for a father who had already lost too much, dangerous was enough to shatter any illusions. Michael raised his hand from the screen, as if he wanted to stop himself from seeing more. He stepped back, approaching the window, his hands resting on the windowsill. "I should have been there," he whispered. "I should have gone when I heard the crying. I should have seen it sooner." Faith adjusted the baby in her lap and took 2 steps closer, respectful, but present. "You were trying to breathe," she said softly. No one can blame someone for trying to survive their own grief. Michael closed his eyes. Faith's voice was calm. He offered no excuses. It didn't lessen the seriousness of the situation. I simply recognized his humanity, and that, somehow, seemed stronger than any judgment. When he returned to the table, Faith squeezed the baby slightly, as if silently asking for courage. Michael watched the end of the recording again. The moment when Faith enters, safely takes the baby, and the child immediately calms down. The difference was striking. Michael took a deep breath, more composed now. "I failed him," he said, his voice broken but steady. "But I won't fail him again." It was there, in that small, quiet office, that his pain began to transform into a decision. Faith felt the weight of the change, not just in his tone but in his posture, in his shoulders that had previously slumped and now straightened slightly. After a few seconds, she found the courage to ask, "What will you do now?" Michael looked away from the screen. Slowly, he turned his face towards the hallway that led to the other side of the house, Vanessa's side. Faith saw the hesitation, fear, "It hurts." And in the midst of all this, newborn courage. Michael took a deep breath, his eyes fixed in that direction, and without saying a word, he took the first step. Michael walked slowly down the hallway, as if each step was a deal he was making with himself. Enough of the silence, enough of the postponements, enough of shirking the responsibility of protecting those who depended on him. Faith stood in the doorway of the office, the sleeping baby in her arms. She didn't follow, but her heart followed every step Michael took. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that settles in after a storm, before anyone realizes that there are still hidden thunderclaps. Michael stopped in front of Vanessa's door. He took a deep breath, and it hit. Her voice came almost immediately, neat and controlled. When Michael opened the door, Vanessa was sitting on the edge of the bed, touching up her lipstick in front of the mirror. The perfect image until the reflection revealed the tense eyes she was trying to hide. She smiled when she saw him, but that smile, so carefully practiced, faltered the next second. "Michael," she said, standing up, "I was expecting you to come and talk. That incident earlier, it was all a misunderstanding." He didn't answer immediately. He closed the door behind him, and he stood up, maintaining a respectful but firm distance. "Vanessa," he began, his voice calm, almost sad. "I watched the footage." She blinked, her lips still slightly curved, until the phrase reached the depths of her consciousness. Michael continued, "I saw everything." The smile faded. The entire controlled structure she carried, her posture, her tone, her charm, seemed to falter, like a song that loses its rhythm. "Michael, that camera catches strange angles," Vanessa said quickly, walking over to him, her heels clicking urgently on the floor. "I was trying to help. He was screaming. I didn't know what to do." "Faith knew," Michael replied, without raising his voice. Something in the sentence struck her like a snap. Vanessa took a step back, her face losing color. "Faith," she repeated, the word coming out as if it were bitter. Always her, always defending the saintly little maid as if she were perfect. Michael shook his head slowly. "This isn't about her, Eledisa. This is about my son." Vanessa laughed, a short, nervous, tense laugh. "Everything is about her, Michael. Ever since she got here, you stopped seeing me. You stopped trying. I've been trying to build a future with you, and she..." Her voice cracked. "She ruined everything." Michael did not respond, but his expression changed. A look of pain, yes, but also of conviction. "Faith hasn't ruined anything," Ella responded. "She's been protecting my son in the spaces where I couldn't." Vanessa took a step back. Her perfect image could no longer be sustained. There was panic in her eyes, a vulnerability she didn't want to show. "I did it for us," Ella disse. "O tom agora mais baixo, quasi supplicante. For our life, for the family we were supposed to build. I just lost patience for a moment. That's all. You can't end things over one mistake." Michael closed his eyes for a second, a gesture laden with weariness. This isn't about ending things, ela disse. Abrindo-os novamente. It's about acknowledging what happened and what could have happened. Vanessa felt the change, the line that Michael drew emotionally between them, and when she realized he wouldn't back down, something inside her broke. Fine, ela disse, pegando a bolsa com movimentos duros. If you want to choose your maid over the life we were supposed to have, go ahead. Vanessa, he tried, but she raised her hand. Don't follow me, she said, her voice trembling more than she would have liked. I don't have anything else to say. She walked past him, the familiar scent leaving a tense trail in the air. She pulled the door open forcefully, but it still closed softly. The mansion seemed to force all sounds to remain delicate, even when hearts were in turmoil. Michael stood still for a few moments, his breathing uneven. When she returned to the hallway, Faith was still there, not close, not intrusive, but present enough to offer support without asking for anything in return. He didn't say anything. She didn't either. The baby was fast asleep, his little face peaceful and secure against her shoulder. Michael ran his hand through his hair, as if trying to shake off the weight that had been building up for months. She's gone, he murmured. Faith simply nodded. Several hours passed. The baby fell asleep. The house calmed down. But when Faith went to the window to close the hallway curtains, something caught his attention. Vanessa's car stopped, in the same place where she had left him. The engine is off. The lights are off. The composition was too quiet for a farewell. Faith felt a slow chill run up her spine. She approached the window, looking more closely. Vanessa hadn't left. Faith stood by the window for a few seconds, trying to understand why Vanessa hadn't left. Perhaps he was waiting for a call. Perhaps he was deciding where to go. Maybe he didn't really want to go. But then she saw movement. Vanessa got out of the car. The door slammed shut with a muffled sound from the distance, but loud enough to shatter the glass and strike Faith in the chest. The woman paced back and forth, her arms gesturing with restrained energy, as if she were arguing with someone on the other end of the line. Even without hearing the words, Faith recognized the tone, fast, low, aggressive enough to be dangerous, but controlled enough to be planned. The moon reflected off her blonde hair, creating an unsettling contrast, an elegant figure silhouetted against the cold of the night. Faith swallowed hard. He felt in his body before his mind that it wasn't just anger, it was restlessness, frustration, and something else, difficult to name. She was so engrossed in watching Vanessa that she didn't notice Michael approaching until she sensed his presence beside her. Faith, he murmured. What is it? She took a small step to the side, making room for him to see. Michael approached the window, his shoulders almost touching hers. He followed her gaze until he found Vanessa's figure outside. His expression changed, not from anger, but from concern. A silent tension ran through his body, like someone who realizes that a door he thought was closed might still be half open. She's still here, Faith said, her voice low, careful not to sound accusatory. Michael nodded slowly. She must have been upset, after everything. Faith did not respond. She wanted to be fair to Vanessa. She wanted to believe that it was just pain and pride, but there was something about the way the woman spoke on the phone, the rhythm of the hands, the rigid posture, the direction of the steps. It didn't seem like the attitude of someone who was just sad. It looked like someone was making plans. Michael continued watching. The dim light from the hallway illuminated only part of her face, but Faith could clearly see what was there. Worry. That kind of worry that comes after a person has already lost too much in life and doesn't know how to risk losing what's left. Without thinking, Faith lightly touched his forearm. It was a minor touch, almost nothing, a gesture of support, not of affection, but Michael breathed a little easier when he felt it. She wouldn't do anything to put anyone at risk, he said, more with hope than certainty. She's just hurt. Faith looked at him, her eyes kind but genuine. Sometimes hurt makes people lose their direction, ela respondió suavemente. Even good people. Michael turned his face towards her. It was close, closer than it had ever been before. Enough for Faith to feel his breath, his warmth, the vulnerability hidden in that tired posture. For a moment, the two stood there, aligned by the same silent doubt, because of the same feeling that something in the air had changed more than it seemed. Outside, Vanessa stepped away from the car, still holding her phone. She stopped in the middle of the entrance. Her head was tilted, as if she were listening to some instruction. or perhaps losing patience with whoever was on the other end. Her hand clenched into a fist. Faith felt her heart tighten. She didn't like that. I didn't like the feeling. I didn't like the silence that followed each tense movement. Michael noticed her fear, and, for the first time since losing his wife, he did not back down from the responsibility of protecting someone. Without saying a word, he took a half step closer, just enough for Faith to feel that she wasn't facing that night alone. It was a small gesture, but powerful, a silent reminder that he was there. The two watched Vanessa, waiting for her to get into the car. He should leave, that it would once again become just a tense memory of the night. But then, Vanessa stopped, property, rigid, as if he had finally understood something beyond the conversation on the phone. She slowly raised her face, and in an almost choreographed movement, his eyes rose to the second-floor window, all the way to the room where the light was still on, until Faith, until Michael, even the baby sleeping in Faith's lap behind the half-open curtain. Her gaze pierced the distance like a thin, icy thread. Faith held her breath. Vanessa is alive. She saw them. The house was enveloped in that silence that only arises when something has just happened or is about to happen. Faith and Michael were still near the window when they heard the sound. A dry crack, then another one, and finally, the loudest noise. Something breaking. Michael reacted first. He straightened his body in a quick, taut, instinctive, almost protective movement. Faith felt the change, the suspended breath, the firm tension in her shoulders. "Did you hear that?" he asked, even though they both knew the answer. Faith nodded, pressing the baby against her chest. The little one stirred, uneasy with the distant noise. Michael hurried to pick it up, a new naturalness in his gestures, as if necessity had awakened in him more strength than fear. "Stay close," he murmured. They descended the stairs together, step by step, the whole house holding its breath around them. The light in the hall flickered softly, creating long shadows on the walls, as if the entire place were on alert. When they reached the ground floor, they saw the glass vase that sat on the entryway table, Michael's wife's favorite, untouched since before the tragedy, was shattered on the floor. The shards glistened like fragments of grief that had never been fully swept away. Faith felt her chest tighten. Michael stood motionless for a moment, the pain passing across his face like an ancient breath he had learned to hide. But something else caught their attention. At the main entrance, slightly open, the light breeze passing by sent shivers down Faith's arms. Michael took a few steps, carefully, like someone walking toward a memory they fear encountering again. And then they saw Vanessa was outside, restrained by the property's security guards. Her hair was disheveled, and the glint in her eyes was more one of frustration than anger. "Sir," one of the security guards said with calm professionalism. "She tried to enter the house again. We intervened immediately." Vanessa opened her arms, exasperated. "Michael, please. I just wanted to talk. You left things unfinished. You can't expect me to walk away without clarity." Michael stood in the doorway, looking at her sadly, not harshly. "Vanessa, this isn't the way." She laughed, a trembling, tired laugh. "I love you, Elodie, and you just replaced me with her, a maid, someone who shouldn't even be close to you." Faith lowered her gaze, not out of shame, but out of respect. She knew she didn't need to defend herself. His mere presence spoke volumes. Michael took a deep breath. "Faith didn't replace anyone," elle respondeu. "Firm mais gentil. She protected my son. She stepped in when I couldn't. You need to understand that's not about you. It's about him. It always was." Vanessa shook her head, hot tears beginning to well up. "You're making a mistake," elle susurrou. This isn't over." The security guards exchanged glances and carefully led her to the car. She didn't resist, not physically, but her words lingered in the air like a cloud that refuses to go away. Faith watched silently as the car slowly drove away through the mansion's driveway. Michael let out a long sigh, the kind of sigh that comes when the body tries to release months of tension all at once. He turned to Faith. The baby was asleep again on his shoulder, tired from the fright. Faith adjusted the little one's blanket in a simple but caring gesture. "Please," Michael said, his voice low, almost frail, "don't leave the house tonight." She slowly raised her eyes. There was no order in his voice. Not even afraid, not even authority. There was humanity. There was exhaustion. There was a need. Not for safety, elle complétou. Just because I don't want to face this night alone. Faith felt something warm spread inside her chest. Not romance, not expectation, but recognition. The type of bond that is formed when two people share a burden that was not meant for one person to carry alone. She nodded slowly. "I'll stay," Faith disse, suave, sincera, "as long as I'm needed." Michael's face softened, and for a moment the silence between them was almost restorative. It was at that exact moment that his cell phone vibrated in his pocket. He picked him up, still cradling the baby in one arm. The screen illuminated his face. A message from the lawyer, Michael the Lion. His body stiffened. Faith saw the change. Slow, deep, worrying. "Michael?" she whispered. "What is it?" He looked up at her, his voice almost inaudible. "It's about Vanessa, Elodie. There's something else." Michael held the phone in his hand for several long seconds, long enough for Faith to realize that the message wasn't just information. It was shocking. It was weight. It was just another piece of his life moving without his consent. The baby slept soundly in his arms, unaware of the changing world around him. Faith took a small, cautious step, not to watch the screen, but to be close enough in case he needed support. Emotional, not physical. That was how she knew how to help. Quietly, respecting boundaries, without rushing. Michael finally found his voice. "It's from the lawyer," he said, and the sentence came out low, tired. "Vanessa, she's filed something, a claim." Faith felt her heart clench, but her expression remained gentle, steady, present. "What kind of claim?" she asked, almost in a whisper, so as not to wake the baby. Michael raised his eyes, green, tense, tired, but trying to remain gentle. "She isn't asking for custody, ella dice, respirando fundo. She's requesting financial rights, to my estate, to assets. She says we had an understanding, a future, and she's entitled to part of it." Silence fell over the hall like snow, soft, cold, deep. Faith inhaled slowly, the light air carefully entering and leaving her breath. She didn't judge Vanessa, but he understood the effect that had on Michael. This man who had already lost his wife's love, his emotional stability, and the courage to enter his own home. "Michael," she said, in a voice that always seemed to know exactly where it belonged, "you don't have to carry this alone." He let out a broken laugh, not of humor, but of disbelief. "I feel like everything I rebuilt is shaking again, ele confesso. Every time I try to stand, the ground moves." Faith moved a little closer, her steps slow so as not to startle his vulnerability. "You're standing right now, Elodie. You chose to protect your son. You chose truth. You chose courage. That is solid ground, even when everything else shifts." Michael looked at her in a way that seemed both to want to believe and to fear believing. "Faith," ele murmuró, "I don't know what I'm doing anymore." She reached out, not to touch him, but to gently touch the arm holding the baby, offering stability to both the little one and the father at the same time. "Then we'll learn together," ella respondu. Step by step, the baby let out a sleepy sigh, as if approving of that silent promise. Michael adjusted it carefully. When they went back to the office, the house was different. Not threatening, not dark, just awake, as if she herself were watching as two weary people found strength in each other. The lawyer had sent attached documents, guidelines, legal steps, measures to protect the assets that Michael was still trying to reactivate after his bereavement. Faith stayed by his side while he read everything. She didn't offer her opinion, it wasn't her place to do so. But he offered something far more valuable to someone in emotional distress: constant presence, calm down, steady breathing, the feeling that he could crumble without falling. "Can you print it?" he asked, his voice a little hoarse. Faith nodded and went over to the office printer. The machine began to work slowly, releasing pages one by one, the soft sound filling the space. When she returned, she placed the papers on the table and carefully organized them. His signature was required on some clauses. Simple, but crucial. She gently pushed the first document toward him. "Here, Faith Dees. This one first." Michael picked up the pen, but his hand hesitated. Not because of a legal decision. He already knew he had to do that. But because of the life that it symbolized. A definitive break with someone who had been part of his attempt to rebuild something after his wife's death. Faith, realizing what he had said without him saying anything, offered him the courage he lacked. "Taking care of yourself is also taking care of the baby," she said. "You're choosing safety, Peace. Michael closed his eyes for a moment, and then he nodded. When Faith slid the document closer, her hand touched his. It was a light touch, quickly, almost accidental, but they both felt it. It wasn't electricity, it was fear. A new fear, tender, frightening, the possibility of a closeness they didn't know if they were ready to receive. Michael looked up. Faith, too. The silence between them had become too much. Fragility, hope, and something that, if you breathed deeply enough, could turn into affection. Right at that moment, the exact moment when neither of them knew whether to pull their hand back or leave it there, Michael's phone vibrated again. The same notification, from the lawyer. Michael frowned and picked up his cell phone. Faith took a half step back, her hand still suspended in the air. He read the message. His face changed. Faith knows. Whatever came next. It wasn't small. The phone vibrated in Michael's hand again. For a moment, he just stared at the screen, the glow reflecting in his tired green eyes. Faith stood a step away, hands gently folded in front of her, giving him space, but not distance. "Go ahead," she said softly. "You can read it." He opened the message. The words came fast, tight, full of legal terms he had learned to dread. "Vanessa's emergency petition has been filed and reviewed. Preliminary hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning. We can respond. You're not without options. Call me." Michael swallowed. The familiar weight of anxiety pressed on his chest, trying to drag him back into the darkness where he had spent so many nights after his wife died. He was so tired of losing, so tired of being late to fight for the things that mattered. He finally looked up. "She's not asking for the baby," he murmured. "She's asking for my money, my company, the estate. She says I owe her a future." Faith didn't flinch. She didn't call Vanessa names. She didn't dramatize. Instead, she asked the simplest and most grounding question. "Do you believe that's true?" Michael hesitated. He thought of the months they'd spent together, the dinners, the polite smiles, the way he had tried to rebuild a life without ever really touching his grief. "She was there," he said slowly. "After my wife died, she stayed. But I never promised her what she says I did. I didn't have anything to promise. I was broken." Faith nodded once, gently. "Then this isn't about debt," she said. "It's about boundaries." Michael let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "I don't want to fight," he confessed. "I don't want courtrooms or public messes. I just want to protect my son and the little bit of peace we're starting to build." Faith's eyes softened. "Then you won't fight alone," she said. "Call your lawyer. Tell him you'll be there. And tomorrow we face it." "We?" he repeated, almost disbelieving. "Yes," she replied simply. "We?" He stared at her for a long moment. Then he called. The next morning, the mansion felt strangely calm. Sunlight slid in through the high windows, washing the hallways in quiet gold. The baby gurgled in his crib, kicking at the air, blissfully unaware that adults were trying to hold the world steady for him. Faith dressed more neatly than usual. Simple blouse, tidy hair, the same soft cardigan. She didn't wear power clothes or armor. Her strength was quieter than that. Michael came down the stairs in a clean shirt and blazer, still tired, but standing straighter. Today, he wasn't hiding in doorways. Today, he was walking into something on purpose. In the study, the lawyer joined them on a secure video call displayed on the large screen. His voice was calm, confident, familiar. "Michael," he said, "I've reviewed Vanessa's filing. She's claiming you entered into an implied partnership and promised her financial support for life. There's no written contract, no engagement notarized, no shared assets. But she's framing you as emotionally dependent and unfair." Michael's jaw tightened. "And the nanny cam?" he asked quietly. "Does that matter?" The lawyer's expression changed. "It matters a lot," he said. "Not because of violence, but because it shows a pattern of instability around your child. It confirms your decision to set boundaries was in good faith, for your son's safety. It undermines her claim that she was acting as a stable partner." Faith shifted her weight just slightly, guilt flickering in her chest. "I don't want to destroy her," Michael said. "I just want her out of our lives. Safely. Legally." "Understood," the lawyer replied. "We'll keep it clean. Respectful, but firm. She doesn't have the rights she thinks she does." Michael looked down at his hands. Then he felt it, a light touch on his forearm. Faith. She didn't say a word, but her presence settled the storm inside him, the way it always did. "Let's do it," Michael said. "I'm ready." The hearing was held by video, a room on a screen, a judge in a quiet office, voices echoing through speakers into the safety of Michael's study. Vanessa appeared on the other side of the call. Her hair was perfect again, her makeup flawless, her composure almost recovered, but her eyes still held that mixture of hurt and stubbornness. She spoke about promises, about dinners, about late-night talks, about how she'd helped Michael function after his loss. Her lawyer painted a picture of a woman used, then discarded. Faith listened from the corner of the room, out of frame, heart heavy, not because she believed the story, but because in some twisted way, she understood Vanessa's loneliness. When it was Michael's turn, he spoke slowly. "I never promised her my fortune," he said. "I never merged assets. I never gave her power of attorney, access to accounts nor a legal title in my company. I was grieving. I was trying to stand up after losing my wife. Vanessa was there, but that doesn't turn shared dinners into legal contracts." His lawyer presented documents, timelines, proof, no shared accounts, no written agreements, no engagement ring purchased or registered. Then, carefully, he played a short clip from the nanny cam. No shouting, no dramatic violence, just a woman far more overwhelmed than she wanted to admit, holding a baby crying in fear, her movements careless, impatient, and a quiet maid entering, rescuing the child with calm arms and a steady voice. The judge watched in silence. "Ms. Reed," the judge finally said, turning to Vanessa, "your feelings may be real, but the law requires more than feelings. There is no contract here, no shared structure, no legal basis for your claim to his estate." Vanessa's jaw clenched. She cast a sharp glance toward the invisible Faith in the room, as if somehow she could feel her there. "Is that it?" she asked, voice shaking. "After everything I did for him, I get nothing." The judge's expression softened but remained firm. "Sometimes," the judge replied, "we give to the wrong person for the wrong reasons, and life doesn't pay us back the way we imagine. That doesn't mean we're owed someone else's future." Vanessa fell silent. The ruling came quickly, clear and final. Her emergency petition was denied. She had no legal claim to Michael's assets. Any further harassment or attempts to force entry into the home would be grounds for a restraining order. The call ended. The screen went black. For a long moment, Michael just sat there, not triumphant, not satisfied, just relieved and exhausted. It was over. Not his grief, not his healing, but this particular storm. He turned, looking for Faith. She was there, of course, still in the corner, as if she had always belonged to that quiet space of support. "You did well," she said, voice soft. "You were honest." "I feel like I just closed a door," he murmured. "Sometimes that's the bravest part," she replied, "choosing what doesn't belong in your future anymore." He held her gaze. "Thank you," he said, "for the nanny cam, for the courage, for staying, for all of it." Faith shook her head. "You're the one who chose to protect your son," she answered. "I just stood where I knew he was safest." It was such a simple line, but to Michael, it felt like a promise. Days passed. The house, once full of ghosts, began to fill with simpler sounds. The baby's laughter echoing down the hall, Faith singing softly in the kitchen while she warmed a bottle, Michael walking through the nursery door without hesitation now, gently kissing his son's head before work. Vanessa's name stopped appearing on his phone. Her lawyer eventually sent a short notice confirming no further legal action. She faded into the city beyond the gates, a chapter closed, not with revenge, but with boundaries. One evening, as the sun sank low and poured orange light through the nursery curtains, Faith sat in the rocking chair with the baby in her arms. He had grown a little, cheeks rounder, eyes more curious. He watched the shadows on the ceiling, following them with quiet fascination. Michael leaned on the doorframe, not hiding, just watching. The house was quiet, safe. For the first time since the tragedy, the silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. He stepped inside. "Can I?" he asked, nodding toward his son. Faith smiled, shy but proud. "Of course." She rose and gently transferred the baby into his arms. Michael sat in the chair this time, rocking slowly, humming a tune he didn't even realize he remembered, one his wife used to sing. His chest tightened, but the pain didn't crush him now. It lived alongside something gentler. Faith stood nearby, watching them with a look that held no envy, no claim, just quiet joy. She had done what she promised. She had helped this house become a place where love could exist again without fear. Michael looked up at her. "Hope doesn't feel like betrayal anymore," he said quietly, surprising even himself. Faith's breath caught in her chest. She had spent so long being the background, the quiet one, the helper, the girl nobody chose first. But here, in this house, with this father and child, she had become something else. Essential, trusted, home. She finally lifted her eyes to his, shy, nervous, but steady. And he wondered, with a kind of awe, has healing always sounded like her voice? The future was still uncertain. There would still be nights of doubt, memories that hit too hard, moments when grief sat at the edge of the bed asking to be remembered. The dangers weren't entirely gone. Life would always bring new storms, and the heart, both his and hers, was not fully ready to call this feeling by any name yet. But the three of them stood together now. A widowed millionaire who had learned to hold his son again. A shy maid who had discovered her courage was exactly what a broken family needed. And a baby who had been saved not by power or money, but by tenderness, vigilance, and love that didn't shout. The house no longer felt haunted. It felt lived in, protected, waiting for laughter to become the dominant sound. Tomorrow, there would be appointments, lawyers to finalize protections, plans for the company, new boundaries, new beginnings. But tonight, it was enough that they were together in a small, warm nursery, with the world kept safely on the other side of the door. Faith pulled the blanket a little higher over the baby's legs. Michael looked up at her and, in a voice barely above a whisper, said, "Whatever comes next and we face it together, if you want to stay." Faith's answer was simple, no speeches, no drama. "I'm already here," she said, and for the first time in a very long time, it felt like everyone was exactly where they were meant to be. The house exhaled, and far beyond its walls, the world kept spinning. But inside, in that quiet room, a small family quietly decided that no matter what storms came next, they would not face them alone.